Hello again and welcome to another 140k Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, we're going to do something a little bit different. Normally what I like to do with these daily videos is go over some unit that I think is particularly noteworthy, perhaps even an auto-include, or we do a deep dive on a particular crunchy combo, tactic or strategy. All of it focused towards the positives and how we can get the most out of our army. But instead of doing that, today we're going to go to the opposite end of the spectrum. We're going to wallow down in the filth, the bottom feeders, the absolute scum, the worthless amphibian pieces of shit. We are going to take a look at the worst units in the Imperial Guard Codex. Now, there are two reasons that we're going to do this. Firstly, it's going to be quite funny. And secondly, it's actually not only important to know what units are good, but also what units to just flat out avoid. A lot of models can be included in your army, and even if they're not very efficient, you can still make them work if you have a decent game plan. But there are those units which are so terrible, which are so bad, that there is no game plan for them. There's almost nothing you can do to make them viable, and taking them will not make your list a bit less efficient. Taking them will make your list actively worse. You'll be handicapping yourself. And it would be like turning up to a 2,000 point game, and if you've taken 100 or 200 points of these bad units, you're actually turning up to that game with only 1,800 points. And for newer players, those which might not yet fully understand or have the full grasp of 40k and how it all works, understanding which units to pick and which units to avoid is important, because you don't want to spend your valuable hobby dollars buying a unit which you then later find out is total trash. And so with all that said, please get ready to join me on this descent into the Underhive, into this place of scum and villainy. Let's dive right into today's episode. And starting us off strong, or should I say weak, we are going to take a look at the Munitorum Servitors. Now, according to the Codex, servitors are lobotomized and augmented people that attend the Departamento Munitorum in countless menial ways. These cybernetic living tools often form service retinues for engineers using their industrial servo arms to repair hulking tanks, but unhesitatingly turning them on the foe should they draw too near. This is a very long-winded way of saying these guys are a big pile of shit. Each servitor comes with a rather unimpressive stat line. They have a movement of 5 inches, which is worse than a guardsman, a weapon skill of 5+, and a ballistic skill of 5+, which is again worse than a basic guardsman. Strength 3, toughness 3, 1 wound, 1 attack, leadership 6. Oh, but they do have a mighty 4+ save. Ooh, that's really going to redeem them. Hint, it's not. Each squad of servitors comes with 4 members, no more, no less. And each of these members comes equipped with standard with a servo arm. Now on paper, the servo arm actually looks like a pretty good melee weapon. It's strength ×2, it's AP -2, and it is a flat damage 3. Now each time the bearer fights, no more than 1 attack can be made with each servo arm, but that's okay because each servitor only has 1 servo arm, and they only have 1 attack. And therein lies the problem, because the servitors have this pretty good combat weapon, but they literally only have 1 attack each. And even if they had more attacks, they couldn't use more than 1 attack on the good combat weapon. So it's terrible. Now, if you gave a bunch of servo arms to some Ogrins, and you allow those Ogrins to swing multiple times with it, you'd have a pretty damn good melee punchy kind of output. But you can't give Ogrins or Bulgars servo arms. So we are, of course, the big sad. Of course, you can swap some of these servo arms out for other weapons. In fact, up to 2 of the servitors can replace their servo arm with a heavy bolter, a multi-melter, or a plasma cannon. Ooh, that's all very good. But unfortunately, in this world of free war gear, where everyone else is getting plasma guns and power swords for Christmas, servitors unfortunately only got a lump of coal. And they still need to pay hard cash and hard points for those weapon upgrades. Perhaps it wouldn't be so bad that you had to pay for the weapons if the servitors were pretty cheap. You know, if they came in at 4 or at most 5 points per model, maybe that would be alright. But no, they are 10 points per model base, and then you have to buy the weapons on top of it. This means that if you did want to give your servitors some kind of ability that made them somewhat usable, You're not looking at 40 points for a squad. You're looking at 50 or 60 points for 4 guys with 2 heavy weapons that are going to hit on a 5+. I mean, it's like taking a heavy weapon squad, but getting less heavy weapons, less wounds, and less ballistic skill, but potentially paying more points for it. Now, their damage output could be completely forgiven. Their terrible stats could be somewhat overlooked if at least they came with some good abilities. In the fluff, they are described as helping out tech priests. Actually, that's total bullshit. It turns out the tech priests actually help them, because the only ability that they have is Mind Lock. And if they are nearby a tech priest, they get ballistic skill 4+, and weapon skill 4+, and a mighty leadership of 8. That's it. They don't improve the tech priest's ability to repair anything. They don't get any kind of rerolls near the tech priest. They don't get any kind of bodyguard rule. No. So in reality, it's actually the tech priest that you need to buy to make the servitors better, not the other way around. And remember, you still need to pay points for that tech priest. For a tech priest and a unit of servitors with special weapons, you are getting close to 100 points very easily. But wait, there's more! Because these guys are not a regimental unit. They are in fact an auxiliary unit, which means no regimental doctrines, no orders. Oh, and guess what? They're not even core. So that means you can't get any reroll 1s to hit on them, reroll 1s to wound. So if you do decide to give your servitors plasma cannons, you better not overcharge them to make those plasma cannons somewhat mildly usable, because if you do, your servitor is more than likely just going to blow himself up. Look, I could go on about how terrible servitors are for hours. They are probably the worst unit in the whole book by far. But let me put this whole thing in perspective. Imagine spending the same points per model as a Kazakin on what you've just heard. That's how much servitors cost. They are 10 points per model. Kazakin are 10 points per model. It's insane. And think about this. For 100 points, you can get a full squad of Kazakin with all of the plasma and melter, hotshot with the hotshot sniper rifle. You can get the whole thing, Voxcaster, and you get regimental orders, and you get more doctrines than everyone else. You get the whole package for 100 points. Or you could take a tech priest, 4 servitors, and 2 plasma cannons. I mean, guys, when you put it like that, you just see how terrible these guys are. If you really twisted my arm and made me come up with one way that they can be used, one single thing that makes them somewhat helpful, I would say they are probably the cheapest way that you can hold an objective with a multi-model unit. So rather than trying to hold an objective with something like a commissar or a cheap character like that, you could use your servitors to hold an objective, to raise a banner, something like that. That's it. You can't use them in any other way. And let's be honest, you're not going to need them to hold that backfield objective, because you're probably going to have a mortar pit or something else doing the same job, but that can also actually contribute towards your victory. In short, servitors, as far as I can see, have little to no usefulness in your army. And they are obviously, even a new player should be able to look at them and go, these things are terrible, I must avoid them. Personally, if I was going to fix servitors, I would actually give them a special rule where if you take a tech priest in your army, then you could take a squad of servitors for free. They don't take up a detachment slot, they don't cost any points, and the only thing you'd pay for would be their special weapons. That's how I would fix them without messing around with them too much. The other way I would fix them is I'd actually have them boost the regimental engines here. I would say that for every servitor with a servo arm that you have in the unit, you can heal an extra wound to a maximum of 3, we'll say. So it means if you want to take a special weapon in there, you can, and you can have a tech priest running around healing D3 plus 3 wounds. That would be kind of cool. Some way that they can boost the repair ability of the tech priest, even if it's just if you have a servitor with a servo arm helping out a tech priest, then you can like re-roll the number of wounds he heals, or if you have 2 servitors, it becomes D3 plus 1. Some way of doing it, if you can have them actually support the tech priest and you make them free, well then they go from being terrible to actually being almost an auto include. But for now, let us give the servitors the Emperor's Mercy and move on to the next unit, which I think is god awful in the new book. And this might actually surprise a few people, but I am going to say that the Regimental Preacher is an absolutely terrible unit and a downright trap. You see, the thing with the servitors is that they're just so obviously bad. But regimental preachers might lull you into this false sense of security and make you think that they actually have some play and some usability in your army. This, in my opinion, is what makes them so dangerous for newer players. If you're thinking of picking one of these guys up because you think they look cool, that's fine. But if you're looking at their stats and their abilities and you think they're actually pretty good, they're not. They're terrible. Trust me. And I'll take you through why right now. Firstly, you're paying 40 points for a single model. Put this in perspective, you could spend 40 points on a regimental preacher, or you could spend 35 points and take a Death Corps Marshal. They're both characters, they've both got pretty much the same stats, the same wounds. One of them is an officer that runs around doing 2 orders and boosting most of your army and handing out rerolls. One of them is a character which can't even do its basic function. We'll get into that function in just a moment, but let's take a look at the stats of this guy for now. He has a movement of 6, a weapon skill of 4+, a ballistic skill of 4+, a strength of 3, a toughness of 3. He's got 4 wounds, 3 attacks, leadership 8, and a 6+ save. Now that 6+ save is a little bit disingenuous. He actually has a 4+ invulnerable save because of his Rosarius ability. But as far as his basic stats go, they're actually really unimpressive. And he has some of the worst stats of any elite level character we have in our army. I mean, compare this guy to the Commissar. He has got an extra weapon skill and a ballistic skill, and he also has a better armor save. And the Commissar still comes with a 5+ invulnerable save as well. Or you can compare it to a Regimental Engineer, who comes with a better ballistic skill, better strength, better toughness, and also a 3+ in armor save. The Preacher comes with some interesting war gear. He has a servo stubber, an auto pistol, a power maul, frag grenades, and crack grenades. The auto pistol is basically a las pistol, and the servo stubber is also basically a pistol, except it's a 3-shot bolt pistol. It's kind of interesting that if you take the auto pistol and the servo stubber, he can shoot both of those, because when you're shooting weapons from a model, you can fire all of your pistols or all of your rifles. So technically this guy is putting out essentially 4 pistol shots a turn, but he only hits on a 4+, and he has no AP, and they're only damage 1. So it might look cool, but they're not very good at all. And the ironic thing is that the one piece of good war gear that he has, which is the power maul, he has to pay for. He doesn't even get to take that for free. It's a 5-point upgrade. So if you want to take him with a half decent melee weapon, it's actually 45 points. And suddenly this guy becomes more expensive than a tech priest, more expensive than a commissar, and then even more expensive than 4 servitors. And we just covered how bad they are. If you want to avoid the 5-point tax, then you can swap all of his weapons out for 2 other alternative loadouts. You can take either an autogun, auto pistol, and a chainsaw. That's one bundle. Or the other bundle is a bolt pistol, a preacher shotgun, and a chainsword. Those weapons are all free, but none of them are particularly impressive at all. But then you get to the preacher's abilities, and you might be fooled into thinking that this guy's actually pretty good. I mean, he comes with something called Warrior Zealot, which means each time that he has charged or been charged or made heroic intervention, when he's in combat, he gets to reroll all his hits. I mean, you stack that power maul on there, you've got 3 attacks at strength 6, AP -1, 1 damage. 4 rerolls to hit. That might do some hurt. It's not statistically even enough to ever kill a single Space Marine. And in return, 2 Space Marines will more than likely turn around and beat the shit out of this guy and kill him. So, yeah, he's not a combat beast. Don't be fooled by the Warrior Zealot ability at all. But then you get to his other ability, Righteous Rhetoric. And this is where the trap card is played. This is where you will be fooled, and you will take him in your arm, and you will think he is worthwhile, and he is not. You see, Righteous Rhetoric allows you to give full rerolls to hit to a friendly unit in the command phase. Or you can give them a 6+ invulnerable save, and they can't be affected by any malediction psychic powers. Look, let's just forget that second part. You're never going to be worried about a 6+ invulnerable save. If it was a 5+, it would be good, but it's a 6+, so it's basically worthless, all right? Let's focus on those 4 rerolls. If you get it off, and to be clear, it's not an automatic ability, you have to roll for it. And it's a 3+, which means 33% of the time it fails. That is far too unreliable. When you think about it this way, there are only going to be 1 or 2 times that this guy's ability is probably going to come up in a game. Most of the time you're going to be shooting, and then there might be this one big combat that you really need to boost one of your units up and get them into the fight, fix those bayonets, all right? What if this clutch moment comes along and the guy just fails? Oh, just rolls a 1 or a 2. You can't command point reroll it. Command point rerolls can only be used for very specific things like to hit rolls or to wound rolls or damage, stuff like that. So you just fail it. Oh, that was good. The one reason I took you, and you just fucked it, mate. But the best bit, or should I say the worst bit, is this guy is supposed to buff guard combat units. Traditionally, in previous editions, you would have paired him with Ogryns or Bulgryns, and he worked really well with those abhuman units. But now, it specifically says that you can only use Righteous Rhetoric on Astra Militarum core or infantry character. Bulgryn aren't core. Ogryn aren't core. So the one thing this guy is meant to do, and he can't even do it on his intended unit. But Mordy and Glory, I hear you say, what about Rough Riders? They are core. It is true, they are core. But the problem is that they have got a 12-inch movement, and he's only got a 6-inch movement. So he can't even keep up with them. And the crazy thing is, you don't need the Regimental Preacher's abilities to get Rough Riders to have essentially 4 rerolls to hit. Rough Riders hit on 3s as standard. You tell them to fix bayonets, which they can do, they hit on 2s. And then as long as they're near a Cajun Castellan or a Deathwatch Marshal, they'll get reroll 1s. And they don't need to get that reroll on a 3+, they just get it. So the Preacher is still completely useless and worthless. Look, at the end of the day, guys, this chap costs the same as a Commissar. Sometimes he might even cost more than a Commissar if you take that power more. And he costs the same or more than a Tech Priest Engineer. But both of those other units get their abilities off without having to roll for it. Commissar can do Perfector's Orders, no problem. He can get people to hold the line, no problem. And the Tech Priest can do invulnerable saves and repairs, no problem. No rolls for them, no 3+ for them. And so this guy is going to cost the same as them, but he can't even buff the units he needs to be buffing, and he can't even do it reliably. If I was to fix the Preacher, it would be super simple. I would just change his ability to go off automatically. I'd even get rid of the whole 6+ invulnerable save, can't be affected by malediction powers. Get rid of that bit. Instead, just go for the 4 rerolls, have him get it off automatically, and have him be able to affect Ogryns and Bulgryns. If you were able to give Ogryns or Bulgryns a source of full rerolls to hit, that would make this guy, it would make Ogryns better, it would make Bulgryns better, and it would make this guy really good. And overall, you wouldn't just be improving one datasheet, you'd be fixing 3 datasheets in one simple change. But last and possibly even least, we have Sergeant Harker, Old Stone Tooth himself. The tale of Harker's competitiveness is a tragic one. Over many editions, his fortunes have waxed and waned. And in the old 8th edition book, for many Kachan commanders, he was an auto-include. But sadly, in the 9th edition book, he is a terrible, dire unit. Looking at his datasheet, you might be kind of confused that I say this. I mean, he's a 40-point character with a pretty decent stat line. He's got a movement of 6, a weapon skill of 3+, a ballistic skill of 3+, strength 5, toughness 4, 4 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 7, 5+ save. I mean, it's much better than the other 2 units we've looked at so far. So why is he so terrible? The reason that Harker is unusably bad is because all of his buffs and abilities and his whole shtick is around boosting Kachan jungle fighters. And I'm not just talking the name of the regiment, I'm talking the actual troop choice datasheet that you find in your codex. Having a unit that can boost jungle fighters is all well and good, but the problem is that jungle fighters are the worst troop choice in our book. Look, if Harker wasn't in here, they'd probably be taking this slot right now. But Harker is here, and so having a guy whose whole thing is to try and boost a bad unit makes him worse than useless. To give you an idea of how comically bad Harker's abilities are, he has an ability called Harker's Hellraisers. Before deployment, you can select one Catachan Jungle Fight unit from your army. Until the end of the battle, each time a model in that unit makes attack, you can reroll the hit roll of 1. Oh goody! I can give rerolls to 1 unit. Not each turn, just in my whole army, 1 unit can be Harker's Hellraisers. Oh boy! I sure hope there isn't a standard Imperial Guard officer that gives out reroll 1s to hit to all core units within 6 inches. Oh wait, there is. It's a Marshal, it's a Castellan. It's half the other special characters we've got. Why would you take... I mean, Strachan, the other named character that Catachans get, gives out reroll 1s to hit to all units within 6 inches of... all core units, I should say. That's Jungle Fighters, that's infantry squads. I mean, it's just terrible. Harker, he has a worse version of the senior officer aura. It's a tail version. And what happens if that squad that you gave reroll 1s to just dies? You know, it's part of the line. It pushes forward. It just dies. I mean, that unit, that ability is just completely wasted. And it's not like Catachans can run around with a bunch of good special weapons. It's not like they benefit from the reroll 1s particularly well. They don't get any plasma. They don't get any heavy weapons. The only thing they can take is las guns and a couple of flamers. And flamers auto hit. Likewise, Harker does actually know regimental orders. And he has the voice of command ability. But unfortunately, he can only issue 1 order. And he can only issue that order to Catachan Jungle Fighter units. And don't be there thinking, oh, well, you could order 1 Jungle Fighter unit and then splash it over to some Kazakin or some other units. No, no, no. You can only splash orders using the Regimental Tactics ability to other Catachan Jungle Fighters. Apparently, infantry squads, Cadians, Krieg, they won't listen to Harker. It's only other Catachans that will listen to anything he has to say. Even if it's passed on from other units, doesn't matter, only Catachans will listen to him. So the fact that Harker can issue orders means nothing because you're never going to take Catachan Jungle Fighters in your army. You're never going to pick them. Cadian shock troops are cheaper and better. Regular infantry squads are cheaper and better. There's no need to ever take Catachan Jungle Fighters in your army, and therefore taking Harker, he has no purpose because you're never going to be taking the units that he buffs. He has a couple of other interesting abilities. He's got Catachan Sergeant, which means he can never be your Warlord, which again is just a debuff. And then he has one called Stone Tooth, which each time this model would lose a wound or roll a d6 on a 5+ the wound is not lost. He's a 5+ feel no pain, essentially. That's okay. It's not bad. But remember that he only has a 5+ armor save and no invulnerable save. So having a 5+ feel no pain is all right, but any sort of multi-wound damage thing is going to kill him. And more often than not, a burst from a heavy bolter or 2 is just going to completely see him off. Harker does come equipped, though. He does come equipped with a heavy bolter. He comes equipped with Payback. This is an Assault 3 heavy bolter, Strength 5, AP -2, and Damage 2. So it's got Assault rather than heavy, and it's got an extra AP. That's good, isn't it? No. You see, an infantry squad with a heavy bolter and the big bullshit banner will do exactly the same thing. You tell that infantry squad to take aim, suddenly its heavy bolter is also AP -2 and is hitting on 3s. Oh, and if it's near the big bullshit banner, even if that infantry squad moves and suffers a -1 to hit penalty, it doesn't care. The big bullshit banner removes all to hit penalties. You might be saying, oh, but Morning Glory, you've got to take heavy bolters in your infantry squads and you've got to take big bullshit banners. You're always going to take heavy bolters in your infantry squad. They are the best heavy weapon choice for them by miles. And you're always going to take the big bullshit banner because it's the best relic in the entire of Warhammer 40k. So all of his abilities are useless. And taking him as a damage dealer is also a waste of time because you could just spend 15 points more and take a heavy weapon team, heavy weapon squad that's going to come with 3 heavy bolters and would take aim. They're all going to hit as good as Harker, and they're all going to have the same AP. And here's the thing. Why would we even pay for heavy bolters, guys? I know this sounds insane, but why are we paying for them? Pretty much every Imperial Guard vehicle comes with a heavy bolter or has the option to take a heavy bolter for free. You're turning up with a Guard army, and you're taking 3 or 4 Lieben Russes, a couple of Chimeras, and some other units. You're probably going to have 7, 8, 9 heavy bolters in your army already. You don't like you need to start fishing around finding extra ones. So, sadly, Harker is basically unusable. He's terrible. There's never any reason to put him in your list. And a bit like the Preacher, he's kind of a trap because a lot of new players will see him. They'll see this data sheet stacked with abilities. They'll see that cool heavy bolter and they might think, oh, this guy's great. But realistically, you're just taking a 40-point weight around your neck. And that, guys, is Mordy and Glory's bottom 3 units in the Codex. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What do you think is the worst unit in the Codex? And what units would you highlight as being some of the best ones that we've got as well? If you found today's video fun, then please consider smashing that like button like a big titty out our girlfriend, and also subscribing to never miss an episode. And if you thought today's video was particularly informative or enjoyable, then please consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. By becoming a supporter, you will gain access to the Mordy and Glory Discord, an online community of over 1,000 active members. It's really exploded over the last 6 months, the Mordy and Glory Discord, and it is always popping off in there. We've got channels for tactics, strategy, hobbying, painting, army list help, and we've also got a pretty spicy meme section too. And I'd just like to take a moment to say a thank you to all of the latest channel members. So thank you to Jesse Burnett, Wimmy Wham, Brandon Dubin, Brian Moore, Martin Loring, Hadrian, Ben Price, Spencer Smith, Quincy Kunz, Ray Toiler, Ventress Dark, The Bandit Cat, Jimmy Hansen, and the Ill-Tempered Fireblade. Thank you guys for doing your part. I also want to do a shout out to the latest Patreon supporters as well. So a massive thank you to Jack Attack, Atin, Blark, Nowgludder, Steel X Spider, Tiki the Hut, and Zabras. Thank you guys for your Patreon support. And last, but certainly not least, I would like to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreon supporters. These are the War Masters, the people that have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a massive thank you to Alan Blunt III, Bonbon Vert, Mark Panconi, Ridemaster 134-1, Ross Miller, Swordfish Trombone, Zabras, Alex Stengal, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, Tom Sutton, and August Varney. Thank you guys. Your generous support makes a huge, huge difference. I hope you've all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching. And of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.